to the 2022 College Football Week 0 preview. Now in this video, we're going to take a look at all 11 games on the slate, and for a couple lucky viewers, we're going to give away a $100 free bet and some one-on-one consultations to discuss your betting strategy for the upcoming season. Now most of you probably already know the drill by now. Week 0 is full of a lot of garbage football teams playing garbage football, and that's okay. If you're a Tar Heel or a Seminole fan, I hate to be the one to break this to you, but if you're playing in week 0, you've got a 0% chance of winning a title this year. Now, we're not here to watch great football, we're here to make money. So we're going to break down each of these games one by one and talk about different scenarios that could play out. And if they do, we're going to touch on what picks you should be taking on the sides, the totals, and when you should just stay away altogether. Now before we jump into game number 1, let's go ahead and give away one of those free $100 bets and 30-minute one-on-one consultations. All I need to know from you in the comments below is if you've ever paid for picks before. All right, and for game number 1 of the 2022 college football season, we've got, drumroll please, Austin Peay traveling to Western Kentucky. Now if that's not bad enough, there isn't even a line posted on this game right now, and I'm not sure if we're going to get one. But Western Kentucky, of course, is known for scoring a million points a game. We know they don't play defense. Austin Peay, on the other hand, not exactly a powerhouse, but I think they could keep this game somewhat respectable. So if we get a live line that's somewhere in the ballpark of plus 28 to plus 30, that might be a good time to take a chance on them. All right, now game number 2 is taking us across the pond to Dublin, Ireland, where Northwestern is hosting Nebraska. This game is set for a 12:30 kickoff. Now last year when these two teams met in Lincoln, Nebraska absolutely annihilated Northwestern, 56-7. But the team's going to look a little bit different this year. Adrian Martinez is out at quarterback, and transferring in from Texas is Casey Thompson. And while that might look like an upgrade on paper, it's going to take a little bit of time for this offense to click. On the other side, Northwestern had a dismal 3-9 season last year, and they really weren't that competitive in many games. With that said, that was a bit of an anomaly for them. They're usually a pretty average, pretty consistent ball team. Now, in this game, I would look to see if we can get Nebraska scoring early and maybe inflating that line a little bit from 12.5 up to, say, 15.5 or 16.5, and that might be a great time to jump on Northwestern. I don't think this game's going to get away like it did last year, but let's just watch and see. All right, game number 3 is kind of your typical week 0 game where you've got Idaho State traveling to UNLV. The game is set to kick off at 3:30 in the afternoon. We do not have a line posted for this game right now, and I'm pretty certain we're not going to get one. So let's not waste any time talking about this one. We'll just move on to game number 4. Game number 4, we've got UConn traveling to Utah State. Now Utah State is a 27.5 point favorite. The total is set at 60.5 points. And the game is set to kick off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Time. Now, typically, we would look at this as a smash spot for Utah State, especially after the way they ended last year. Now, UConn, of course, we know has been a laughingstock of college football for a while. But things are starting to look up a little bit. Jim Mora Jr. is in as the new head coach, and with him have come a trio of Power 5 transfers from Alabama, Missouri, and Texas. And I know that's not going to make them great overnight, but it could give them a spark and make them just a bit respectable early on in this game, especially if the Aggies are just coming off the offseason and trying to figure out how to replace the wide receiver production that they lost this year. So, what I would recommend is waiting to see how this game starts off. If we get lucky and it's a 0-0 game early on, or if by some grace of God UConn happens to take the lead, we could get ourselves a very nice value on a reduced line for the Aggies. So instead of 27.5, I'd love to be able to grab something at or below 24 points. Now, realistically, if that's not the case, and let's say that the Aggies come out and they start taking care of business early on, I have no problem backing them at a higher spread of, say, 29.5 or 32.5 if I feel like what they're doing is sustainable. So with that said, I expect to be backing the Aggies in this game at some point in time. I just want to make sure that what I think is going to happen actually translates onto the field. Now, from a betting perspective, game number 5 is my absolute favorite on the board. We've got Wyoming traveling to Illinois, and Illinois is a 10-point home favorite. The over-under is 44.5 points, and the game's going to kick off at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Now, I think that public perception is playing into this line just a little bit. We know that Illinois struggled to score last year, but 10 points in this spot seems a little too low. Wyoming had one of the worst rush defenses in the country last year, and they lost what little talent they had to the NFL. I fully expect Illinois to come out and dominate the ball on the ground, control the clock, keep Wyoming's offense off the field, and I think they're going to be able to score pretty comfortably. Now, with that said, Tommy DeVito is making his debut for Illinois, having transferred in from Syracuse. I don't think he's going to be asked to do a whole lot other than manage the game, manage the clock, and limit turnovers. So, I'm going to wait and see how this game starts off. If Illinois does in fact deploy this smash mouth Big Ten football strategy, I think that this game could run away from Wyoming. I have no problem taking Illinois at a bigger spread in game. So 13.5 points, up to 16.5 points, if I feel like that what they're doing is manageable and it's going to remain that way the rest of the game. Okay, now game number 6 is another one where we don't have a line posted, and I truthfully don't think we're ever going to see one. But you've got Duquesne traveling to Florida State, and this is a 5 o'clock kickoff. I think most people didn't even know that Duquesne had a football team, which is why maybe the odds makers are struggling to come up with a line. I would say if something gets posted and it's at or below 50 points, I think you just take it. And you're not going to hear me say that very often about betting on a game before the game starts. As a matter of fact, I never do that. I never recommend doing it. But the reality is that if a line gets posted for this game, there's a good chance that it's not going to be there for live betting. So if you get an opportunity to take this game at or below 50 points for Florida State, I think it's worth a shot. And if it starts to creep up into that like 59.5 or 62.5 points, I just think you lose all the value there. So just, again, we probably won't have that dilemma. I don't think this game's getting posted. So let's just move on to the next one. Game number 7, we've got Charlotte traveling to FAU, where FAU is a 7.5 point home favorite. The over-under is 57.5 points. So this game's going to kick off at 7 o'clock in the evening, and I don't know why the line is 7.5 points. I just really thought it would be higher. These two teams met last year. FAU absolutely smoked Charlotte. I guess Charlotte's offense is going to be a little bit better this year, but the question is how much. And FAU's not really taking a step back from last year either. I'm just a little bit surprised. Now, I'm not saying there's a ton of value there. I'm not saying to rush out and bet on FAU at minus 7.5. But I think going into this game, I'm going to be looking for FAU to be a little more dominant. And if that line starts to creep up, let's say 9.5, honestly, upwards of 12.5, I'd be very comfortable taking FAU. And so I want to see how this game starts off, see if Charlotte's passing game can really keep up with FAU's offense. The other thing I'm going to look for is to see if this game remains scoreless, let's say halfway through the first quarter or so. If we can get that over-under trickling down closer to 50 points instead of the 57.5 that it's at right now, I think that could be a good opportunity as well. I really expect FAU to be able to score. The question is how good of an improvement Charlotte's going to make on the offensive side and how many points they're going to be able to rack up. All right, so moving on to game number 8, we've got yet another one that's off the board today, and I don't think this one's coming back anytime soon. This game is set for an 8:15 p.m. kickoff. Now, Florida A&M is traveling to UNC Chapel Hill, and again, this is quite a bit of a mismatch. I wouldn't want a part of this game even if it was available. So instead, let's go ahead and give away another $100 free bet. Drop me a comment below and let me know what you think the final score of this game is going to be. I'll pick the person who comes closest based on total number of points scored by both teams and the spread. Now, game number 9 should be one of the more competitive games on the board today. We've got North Texas traveling to UTEP for a 9 o'clock kickoff. Now, UTEP is currently getting 1 point at home, and the total is set at 55 points. Now keep in mind, these two teams met at the end of last year. North Texas did win that game at home 20-17, and it was part of a 5-game win streak that North Texas had to end the year. I'm really leaning towards the under in this game, but we're going to wait and see how this plays out. My guess is that this game's going to be won in the trenches, and my hope is that we can get some scoring early on and maybe drive this line up into the 60s, at which point I would be more than happy to be betting the under late in the second half. This next one, in my opinion, is going to be one of the more entertaining football games on the slate, and not necessarily for great reasons. But we've got Vanderbilt traveling to Hawaii for a 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. Now, Vanderbilt's currently favored by around 7 points. The over-under is sitting at about 55. Now, interestingly enough, when this line first opened up, Vanderbilt was just a 1-point favorite. But that smart money came in really quickly and really early on and pushed this line all the way up to a touchdown. Now, these teams are both in complete gut and rebuild mode. Vanderbilt just happens to be a little bit further along in that process. I think that what we're going to see is that Vanderbilt's going to try to impose some of that SEC smash mouth football in this game, and Hawaii, of course, is going to counter with their aerial attack. The only difference is that Hawaii has so many new pieces. I don't know how quickly they're going to figure out their offense and their defense. I could see this game being very sloppy, a lot of turnovers, a lot of bad defense. So I think the score could run up a little bit, and I can see Vanderbilt running away with this game early on. However, I'm probably going to focus in more on the money line for Vanderbilt in this game if I can get it decent price late in the game. So if we can find something in the minus 200s, the minus 375 range, and they're holding a lead late in the game, I'm more comfortable with taking them to win the game outright because I don't trust with their inexperience that they can maintain a large lead down the stretch. Again, all it takes is for Hawaii to connect on one or two of their deep passes to take a 14-point game down to a 7 or a 4-point game. So again, I'm going to be focusing on that money line. Hopefully we can get a good price. Hey, and if Hawaii surprises me and they come out early and they're just, lights out, I'll probably just avoid this game altogether. I'm not sure that Vanderbilt is built to come back, and they're also not quite as experienced to be able to really figure those things out on the fly. All right, so before we jump into our last game, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so that you can get every week's preview for college football, NFL, along with my in-game betting picks for WNBA, NBA, college basketball. Those are all going to be completely free to you just for subscribing. Now, game number 11 is the last game on the slate here, and we've got Nevada traveling to New Mexico State for a kickoff time that hasn't even been set yet. Now, the reality is I'm staying away from this game almost entirely. Not because of the kickoff time's not set yet, but we've got two programs here that are completely in rebuild mode. Similarly to Vanderbilt and Hawaii in the previous game, these teams have a little more structure around them, but there are a lot of new players on both sides of the ball and both teams. We also have some new head coaches involved, so this game just has a lot of unknowns. Furthermore, this game opened up with Nevada as a 17.5-point favorite, and that line quickly swung to just 9.5 points. And whenever we get that kind of action, it tells us that there's a lot of information maybe that we're not privy to that makes some of that smart money look a little more justified. However, in the process, we've lost such a big swing there. So just because people like New Mexico State getting 17.5 points doesn't mean it's a great bet now to take them getting just 9.5 points. But I'm going to watch the game. I'm going to look for opportunities to hit quarter bets and possibly a late over-under, or I might just stay away from this game altogether if I'm just not comfortable with it. So for us to just have 7 games on the slate for Saturday is absolutely a dream come true for me. I can watch each game, focus on what's actually happening, and bet accordingly. Now, you've heard me say this a couple times in the video. I almost never bet on games before they kick off, and I really encourage you to start taking this approach too. Live betting is the only way for you to gain an advantage on the sportsbooks and be profitable long term. There's no piece of information or trend that you're going to research and identify before the game starts that the sportsbooks don't already know about. Don't be naive and think that there's an answer to the game before it starts. There isn't. But when the game starts, that's where the advantage shifts from the sportsbooks to the viewer and to the bettor because we can bet on what's actually happening and what we actually see. Meanwhile, humans are no longer setting the lines for sportsbooks. When the game starts, it shifts to a computer-based model, which is basically just taking into account the time and score of the game, but doesn't take into account a lot of other factors. And very rarely will humans step in on behalf of the sportsbook during the game to make real adjustments. They'll only do that if, for example, star quarterback goes down all of a sudden. Then you might see a game come off the board, and when that tells you is that the computers are being paused, humans are stepping in to make adjustments manually, and then you'll see that line come back, and then the computers take over again. So again, there's a lot of opportunity for live betting. If you're not familiar with it, if you've never done it before, just reach out to me. Shoot me a message or drop a comment in this video. I can help you get your account set up. I can make sure you're using the best sports book for live betting. But there is so much money to be made just by watching and betting what you see instead of predicting or guessing what's going to happen before the game even kicks off. So again, guys, do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, hit the bell icon for notifications, because when I go live with bets in the moment, you're only going to have a few seconds or a couple minutes to react to that. So before we wrap things up, let's go ahead and give away a $50 free bet that'll be good for next week's action, which is going to be week 1 of NFL or week 1 of college football. All I need you to do is drop me a comment below. Let me know what your plans are for watching the week 0 games. I'm going to be in Vegas with some friends. We're drafting fantasy football, and of course, we'll be watching these games as well. I hope that you have a great time wherever you are, and I'll see you next week.